Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of our program Languages of the World. As usual, we've got some interesting stuff for you to talk about and discuss. And I'm gonna talk about something which is really very interesting. Someone asked me or actually told me that they are trying to invent a language, an artificial language, so that everybody anywhere in the world can use that language. So, for example, we speak Arabic, all right? And instead of learning English or German or French or whatever, all the world can learn one single language, all right? This artificial language. And why should we do that? All right. And instead of having to learn many languages, because some people are actually sometimes they have to learn different languages, because also when we communicate, sometimes we tend to use our mother tongue even though we know how to speak another language. This usually happens, if you notice, among presidents, for example. If our president, for example, who speaks Arabic, meets with the American president, all right, they speak through a translator. Why? Perhaps the president knows how to speak English. Yeah, but why should he use the other person's language? Why not the other person speaks Arabic, for example? So in order to avoid these, like sensitive matters, okay, so a lot of people suggest that one artificial language should be invented so that everybody can use it, all right, and speak it when you speak to people of other countries. But actually there is already a language or an artificial language that started a long time ago. All right, so someone decided to invent an artificial language, and he called it Esperanto. And try to search for this language on the internet, Esperanto. All right, so why did he do that? For the same reason, to make it easy for everybody throughout the whole world to communicate. All right, and sometimes learning another language is difficult. So this guy used very, very simple and easy words, and also very simple and easy grammar, all right? So that to make it easy for people to learn that language. But do you think it's a good idea if this happens? All right, if all people everywhere in the world speak only one artificial language to communicate with each other, for me, I don't think so. Why? Because when you learn, for example, a native language, like for example, I learned English, I learned French, Spanish, whatever, Italian, Portuguese, Korean, whatever the language is, what happens? You do not just learn a language, but you also learn about the culture of that language and the history of that language, all right? And when you speak another language, somebody might correct you if you say something wrong. For example, if you talk to a native speaker, they can correct you. They know very well how to speak their language. But what if everybody has this artificial language? What if they make mistakes? All right, will they be able to correct each other? It doesn't have an artificial language, has no native speakers, has no culture, has no civilization, has no history. So I don't think that this is a good idea. I think that English is already, acting very well, is doing a great job. Actually, everybody throughout the whole world speaks English. So wherever you go, all right, you'll find a lot of people speaking English. So when you speak English, for example, it opens so many horizons for you, all right, because you do not just learn about the culture or the history of those countries which use English as their mother tongue, but also, you know, of course, English is the language of the age, of the sciences, and actually, when you learn English, you could also learn so many things. You cannot, for example, do your higher studies without English, so you need to do that. Why I'm talking about this? Because on this episode, we're gonna talk about a very important figure in English. It's a literal figure, like someone who is, like, let's say, one of the greatest writers of English literature. She's called Agatha Christie. Of course, everybody, I'm sure, everybody knows this name pretty well, Agatha Christie, because her works have been translated throughout or to different, to all other languages, and has also been made into movies. So everybody knows this person. All right. Of course, Agatha Christie, as you see here, is the world's best-known mystery writer. All right. She has or she is dedicated to this genre, mystery. She just loves to write mystery. Stories about mystery, or she's a mystery writer. Her books have sold over 1 billion copies in English language and another billion in 44 foreign languages. She's the most widely published author of all time in any language. All right, and she's been outsold only by the Bible and Shakespeare. All right, so can you imagine? Her writing career spanned more than half a century. So she spent more than half a century writing fiction, writing crime stories, during which she wrote 79 novels and short story collections, as well as 14 plays, one of which, The Mousetrap, is the longest running play in history. The Mousetrap. Yeah. All right. So I want to comment here on something. You know, imagine yourself writing all that number of stories, of novels and plays and short stories. All right. I guess if any of us could just manage to write one single novel during his lifetime, this may be regarded as an achievement. But it's a talent that some people have, all right, which is writing, and writing fiction. And it's not easy at all to be a novelist or to write fiction. All right, so it needs a lot of talent, and it needs also a lot of effort, reading a lot, and also getting to know about the world, having a lot of experiences. So this is really very tough. Now let's carry on and read. We're talking here about some of her quotes, some quotes for Agatha Christie, and this is, of course, her picture. It says, "The truth, however ugly in itself, is always curious and beautiful to seekers after it." Okay, the truth, however ugly in itself, is always curious and beautiful to seekers after it. All right, yeah, sometimes the truth can be ugly, but all right, we, however, sometimes need to learn about the truth. All right. So even though we know that it could be hurting, it could be bad, it could be ugly. All right. So this is one of her quotes. Now let's move to another quote for Agatha Christie, and actually this is also one of her most famous quotes. She says, "I like living. I like living. I have sometimes been wildly, despairingly, acutely miserable, racked with sorrow, but through it all, I will know quite certainly that just to be alive is a grand thing." Yeah, and a grand thing means a big thing. All right? So, yeah, life is sweet. Life is interesting. We all love to live, and we all love to have a great life and to enjoy our life to the full. But sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes bad things happen in our life, all right, that could turn our life into misery and sadness and worry and despair. And we see a lot of people like committing suicide. They choose to die than to live in misery. All right, but this is actually something that we should think sensibly about. Okay, so the idea of living itself is grand, is great. Okay, now let's move to this other quote, which says, "Crime is terribly revealing." Crime is terribly revealing. Okay, try and vary your methods as you will. Your tastes, your habits, your attitude of mind, and your soul is revealed by your actions. Let's read it one more time. It says, "Crime is terribly revealing. Try and vary your methods, like use different methods as you will. Your tastes, vary your tastes, vary your habits, vary your attitude of mind, and your soul is revealed by your actions." So it reminds me of the idiom which says, "Actions speak louder than words." So, however different our attitudes may become, our way of life, everything, all right, but our actions reveal what's in our soul. Now let's move to another quote for Agatha Christie, but no, let's take some break and we'll be back after the break, so stay with us. Of course, Agatha Christie was a great lady. You know, she's still alive with her works, with her masterpieces. I guess everybody throughout his life, anywhere in the world, must have watched something for Agatha Christie or read something for Agatha Christie. All right, her stories, her novels are also very good for you to think. All right, not just to learn a language, not just to learn about the inner self and how people, you know, do different things in different cultures, and how people think, and how people are greedy sometimes, and what can people do in order to get something. Or sometimes they could, you know, they could kill somebody just to do something or to get something. This is really very bad and very cruel, but you know, evil exists. Evil exists. Just as good exists, evil itself exists. So our life is always a struggle between good and evil. Anyway, so now let's move to this, and these are actually some of her stories, some of her masterpieces, some of her novels. The first one is called Murder on the Orient Express. Murder, and murder means killing, of course, on the Orient Express. All right, and the other one is Peril at the House, and the word peril means danger. All right, so another one is Death on the Nile, and this story is set here in Egypt, as it says, Death on the Nile. And also the other one is Sitaford Mystery, the Sitaford Mystery. And you know what? I want to tell you something. You could learn new vocabulary just by reading the titles of novels. And this is something that I want you to try, all right? So try to get titles for novels, or just from the covers, and you can find that on the internet. Just read only the title of a book, all right? And you will learn some new vocabulary. Like the word peril, for example, here we had the word peril, we had the word mystery, all right? So when you read these words, and you don't know the meaning of them, so when you look them up, you get to know the meaning of these words. So you could improve your language and increase your vocabulary by just reading the title of books. So I think this is really very interesting. Yeah. So now this is a story which is called Murder on the Orient Express. Okay, let's read some part of it. Okay, it says here, it was 5 o'clock on a winter's morning in Syria. Alongside the platform at Aleppo stood the train grandly designated in railway guides as the Tourist Express. It consisted of a kitchen and dining car, a sleeping car, and 2 local coaches. All right. By the step leading up into the sleeping car stood a young French lieutenant, resplendent in uniform, conversing with a small man muffled up to the ears, of whom nothing was visible but a pink-tipped nose and the 2 points of an upward curled mustache. All right. It was freezingly cold, and this job of seeing off a distinguished stranger was not one to be envied, but Lieutenant Dubosc performed his part manfully. Graceful phrases fell from his lips in polished French. Not that he knew what it was all about. There had been rumors, of course, as there always were in such cases. His general's temper had grown worse and worse. And then there had come this Belgian stranger, all the way from England, it seemed. There had been a week of curious tensity, and then certain things had happened. All right. So, of course, This is part of the story. You're not supposed to understand everything now, because it's gonna take time to understand the story. But I want you to try and get one of Agatha's stories and read it, even in Arabic, okay? Some people are used to reading fiction, so when they read something, they understand it quite well. But when they listen to something, they don't understand it quite well. Other people who practice the language more by speaking, but they are not used to reading, for example, it's the opposite way round with them. It's the other way around, actually. So they can speak very well, but when they read something like this, they may not be able to understand it easily, and they take a long time to try to understand it. All right, of course, literal language is hard anyway, but it can help you improve your language, all right? You might understand, or you might look for the words separately and then combine them together and try to understand the whole thing. Sometimes it takes more than one reading to understand something. So you may not, especially when it comes to the start of a novel. I mean, usually when I start reading a novel, I read chapter 1 more than one time, more than once, and then I move along, okay? But usually the first chapter is the hardest. As they say also, the first step is the hardest. I say when it comes to reading fiction or novels, the first chapter is the hardest. So try to do that, okay? Try at least to give it a try and get one novel and read only one chapter. Maybe you'll find yourself getting along with that, so you may decide to read the whole story, and you do not just read it to improve your English, but you also read it for fun, okay? Because usually when you read a novel is a whole life, all right? A novel is a whole life. So when you read a novel, you actually live another life through that novel that you're reading. And perhaps on our next episode, I could talk to you about the difference between reading a story and watching the movie of that story, or reading a novel and watching a movie of that novel. What do you think is better? Do you think it's better to watch the movie? It's easier, yes, to watch the movie. But what's more fun? We'll talk about that on our next episode. So until we meet again, we wish you all the best. Goodbye.